everybody, it's the Bakery Bears. Oh, I got it all wrong.
That all went horribly wrong.
I go again.
Great, because it'll come back round again. It's a bit like that, and that's how I sort of feel about this.
That'd be a bit moth-eaten.
So we ought to tell your mum that. Literally, she never throws anything away.
She's got things that are coming back for the second time.
Yeah, I think you will happily sit and shed a tear over something.
Yeah, the right thing, like Olivia Newton-John.
And we're just a mile west. Is it west? No, it's east.
Or Anakin in the final.
Oh, yeah, you only how did you mean?
No, I like the line as I wrote it.
That in 2022, I would become someone who wore bracelets.
Yeah.
The Flynel Platinum Collection. We're bracelet buddies.
Bracelet buddies.
That's what they call us.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Welcome, everybody. It's the Bakery Bears video show. Oh, my goodness. We're back.
We are.
Oh, yes. And it's time for a show featuring Walking the Wall.
Yes.
Can you believe it? At the start of this year, we began our epic quest to learn all about Hadrian's Wall in its anniversary year, 1,900 years since it was built.
Yeah.
And today is the penultimate episode.
It is.
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Do you know what? When I was filming the final shot of this episode, I could feel myself getting a bit emotional.
You said that to me when you got home.
And I'll be honest, I'm worried about the final show. What a walk, though, today.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've loved the most about this series that we've produced this year is it's given me the opportunity to visit some of the places which I've always wanted to go to, but never bothered to make the time.
We've kind of been in the vicinity of all of these places, haven't we? But never actually.
And it's a narrative I pick up in today's episode and that I picked up throughout the series, and that is human beings need to stop listening to what society tells them they're supposed to do when they go visit something. For example, if you go to London, got to go to the Tower of London.
Yeah.
There are so many other things that actually are way better than that you should do. It's not even funny.
But also, even like, you're visiting the UK, you've got to go to London.
No, you don't.
Oh, you've got to go to Bath. I think everybody goes to Bath who visits the UK. I've never been to Bath.
If you were to ask me to give you top 5 places to visit in the UK, Bath or London wouldn't even make the top 5.
Well, they wouldn't for me either.
They might not even make the top 10. Forget London, because today it's all about Hadrian's Wall. And it's just the most tremendous walk, because we're going to go slap bang through a part of Hadrian's Wall, which I had no idea was so important. And it was so important because it was a crossing point which all the local people used to use before the Romans turned up. And that's what makes this part of the wall. There's just stuff everywhere. If you look from above, if you go on Google Maps or Google Earth, as Kay likes to do.
Oh, love me some Google Earth.
And you have a look at the area north of Haltwhistle, you will see lumps and bumps coming out your ears. Well, you don't need to go look, actually, because I'm going to take you for a walk through them later on in the show. That, though, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Because, oh my goodness, what a show we've got in store. Because, oh yes, I'm getting rather passionate about socks.
No.
I really am.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a bit strange.
I know.
You haven't shared this knowledge with me.
Honestly, socks have always felt like a bit of a chore until I knit the Moss Eccles socks.
Oh, yeah, you
And after making a bit of a mess up of the first one, I've learned more knitting these socks than I've ever learned knitting any pair of socks ever. You've also, though, you've got a lovely What's Off Your Needles.
I have.
And also, as well, I think we should show, because on the 1st of September, the Flynel Platinum Collection pattern of 2022 is launching. So I think when we watch the first part of Walking the Wall, you should grab that and you should show it.
Oh, right, okay, we'll do.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because, oh yes, that item which you'll see in What's Off Your Needles, you'll see on my head
Yes.
at the start of Walking the Wall.
That's true.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So definitely as well.
I will get it and I'll show you.
Excellent.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's coming later on in the show as well, which is going to be absolutely lovely. Oh, yes, it's going to be wonderful. Now, stop the presses. Now that is a cool phrase. Wouldn't you love to be the person who, in the newspaper mills, when they were running the stop the presses, stop the presses?
I don't know that they even really have presses anymore.
They still do.
Do they still have
I was
them?
looking this up, and actually, it will have
I guess
been.
they must do, mustn't
Yeah,
they?
yeah, because people still do print.
Yeah.
And you would have to stop the presses if a story suddenly came in that you needed to run.
Yeah.
And I did find that it had been, and I'm sure it will have been spoken since, but it was spoken in 2011. It was the New York Times.
Right.
They stopped the presses because Barack Obama announced he was going to make a speech, and that was going to go into the paper and all of that. So someone had to go and shout, stop the presses.
Brilliant.
What a cool thing.
Yeah.
Stop the presses. Who would have thought? I personally would never have dreamed that in 2022 I would become someone who wore bracelets.
He has become the bracelet man. I've got bracelets on as well.
Now, not
got
just
little-
one bracelet,
No, how many have you got now?
not two, not three, but four.
1, 2. You have got 4 on now.
4 bracelets. Oh, yes.
That's enough now. We've said I bought him a couple for. When did I get the? Oh,
Well,
for our anniversary.
Anniversary, Father's Day, and you got me this one years ago.
Years ago.
Yes. What got me just wearing that one on its own was it's so thin and I've got such a long arm. It just didn't look quite
No,
right.
it don't look quite right.
Sticking 4.
So now he's got a plethora.
This one here, it looks like more than 4, but it isn't. It's just one. It's a long one.
That's the story of the bracelet that you will remember from a few weeks ago.
Yes,
It's the same one I've got, but I've added a couple onto mine as well.
We're great. And also as well, 2022 is the year I started wearing bracelets, and it's also the year our daughter Bryony started having milk on her cereals.
Oh, God.
It's a banner year, everyone. I mean, how funny
She's
is that?
she's never ever wanted to have milk on her cereals. Honestly, it's just hilarious.
She would go, he'll make them all soggy.
Yeah, she drinks milk every day. She still has warm milk every day. You know, she's done that since she was tiny, and she still wants warm milk. So she gets her milk, but she just decided to try milk for whatever reason on her cereals, and she's like, oh, it's quite nice.
It was Cocoa Pops.
Cocoa Pops persuaded her. She's never had Cocoa Pops. I'm always like, with cereals, I'm always like, right, it's got to be something that's fairly good for you, you know?
I'm sure I spoke about it prior to it. I did, because I said that I used to have them when we used to go on holiday when I was a kid. And I was talking about all the different cereals that were in there. We were reminiscing.
We've got one of those multipacks.
Yes,
for
that's exactly what you did.
Yeah.
And I said, the Cocoa Pops, they're so chocolatey, they even turn the milk brown.
But that's on the advert.
I know it is.
Right, okay.
But I said it, and I just wonder if that planted the seed that
Probably,
made her
because
think,
she's like, oh, I want to see the milk going brown. and
what a strange idea.
and now she has milk on her cereals. So, you know, the world has moved on.
It's
from
momentous.
Dry cereals.
2022 will always be the year of the bracelet and the milk on the cereals.
Yeah.
But that's enough of that.
Yes.
Because there's too many wonderful things to see. So it's time that I ask Kay Jones, what's on your needles?
Oh, I've got some really, really exciting things this week. And the first thing...
Well, I was going to say, because last week was just rubbish.
Absolute rubbish last week.
We weren't here last week.
No, we weren't. Week before.
We were radio showing last week.
Week before last. Does everybody say the week before last?
Radio showing in a particularly popular episode, it seems.
Oh, right. Which one was that?
We were digging into what we have learned since 2020. It was our positive way of talking about the pandemic. Lots of comments. So thank you all.
But, you know, yeah.
Thank you all for your messages on that.
A fun one.
And you can go and listen to that now on our. You can find the show actually on our website. But look.
But this project is in this lovely bag that I made with the Stitcher U panel.
Which is finished.
Well, it's finished now, and there's been so many lovely mushroom houses that I've seen in all different colours and different sort of threads. And I've seen a couple of people already making this into
All
various
sorts.
things as well.
It's going to come up lots. We've got our next Patron exclusive live show on Sunday, and I was collecting lots of images for that.
Oh, right.
There's just some amazing ones.
Yeah,
Quilts.
and quilts and bags and all sorts.
Just tremendous.
So, yeah, it's been really fun.
Yeah.
So this is the large bag that I made with my panel, and in this large bag is my cardigan.
Wow.
I haven't worked on this, or I hadn't worked on this in ages and ages.
That's okay then.
Yeah, well, I've come to realise that it actually is okay. Now, I've actually learnt quite a lot about me as a knitter from picking this back up. Because, generally speaking, I don't like to put projects down and not touch them for ages and ages and ages. I'm kind of a finisher, you know, I just don't like leaving things to sit. And this had been sat in a project bag for quite some time, for no other reason really that I was just focused on so many other things, and this just took a back seat. But recently I just thought, oh, do you know what? I think I'm going to get that out, and I think I'm going to start working on it again. And I absolutely have loved it. And I think what it's taught me is that I can put things in a bag and forget about them for as long as I want, because it will come back around again. I suppose it's like fashion, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, if you're one of these people that never throws anything away, great, because it'll come back around again. It's a bit like that, and that's how I sort of feel about this.
That'd be a bit moth-eaten.
I know.
I'm thinking of my mum.
I'm going to say we ought to tell your mum that. I don't, literally, she never throws anything away.
She's got things that are coming back for the second time.
Yeah, I think she probably has. But, you know, she's got an outfit for every single occasion she could possibly want. So
all
that's
her
a
friends,
plus.
whenever they need, like, oh, we need something specific, we'll go to Wendy.
If they ever need anything sort of vintage for sort of theatre productions or anything.
Like, not just theatre, people go, like, for dresses to wear places.
To wear. Yeah. It's brilliant.
Might just need a dry clean.
It's brilliant if you don't mind having a lot of stuff, and I don't like having a lot of stuff, but you know, everyone's different. So yes, I've been working on my cardigan. Now this cardigan, I decided a while ago now, I'm going to have to start writing the dates down when I, you know, start working on things, because I just forget how long ago something is. But it's certainly a few months ago. I decided foolishly that I would try and design myself a little cardigan. It was at a time during the whole menopause thing, and I had about 6 months when I was just plagued with hot flushes and I was just boiling all the time. Well, I say all the time, it was mainly at night. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I just had like a little cardigan that I could put on and take off really easily, just a short cardigan. And that's really what sort of got me thinking about this. So I decided I would design it myself, because I'm not really a garment knitter. I tend to get a bit weary with larger projects. So I thought if I design it myself, then that might
create some emotional
and it
buy-in.
would just keep my interest going as well. So I had this book by Anne Budd, and in here there's lots of really basic patterns, and I found in here a basic cardigan pattern. It's called a modified drop shoulder, but I've actually changed it quite a lot from here. In here, all the garments are knit in pieces. So for a cardigan, you would do a back, 2 fronts, 2 sleeves, all knit flat, and then you would sew them all together. Very traditional. I wanted to actually change that, and I wanted to knit this in as few pieces as possible. So what I'm doing is I'm knitting the back and the 2 fronts in one piece. And then all I've got to do is knit the sleeves, and I'm going to knit the sleeves differently as well. I'm going to pick up stitches and knit the sleeves down instead of in the book they knit the other way, and my sleeves are going to, the shape of it's going to be different. So really all I'm using that book for is the basic numbers, because I've added a pattern into this. I've created a stitch pattern for it, and pretty much all of them in that book are fairly plain. I think there's a few texture patterns. So I've just really used that as a basis for things like how long to knit something, the armhole depth, and my original cast on numbers and things like that. So this is where I'm up to, and I've put a marker when I picked it up again, and I've knit quite a lot. So look, I was way down there, and I've knit all of that, and it's quite a big thing, you know, it's because it's the back and the fronts all together. It's a large piece of knitting. So I've done quite a lot, and I'm at the stage now, I've paused because I'm at the stage now where I'm thinking that I'm probably not too far off with the length, because I don't want this long. I really only want it to come sort of around my waist or hip area. I don't quite know. And I know that this is my original piece that I washed and blocked. That's the lovely stitch pattern. And I know from measuring this that it does grow a bit because of the stitch pattern, I think, means that it grows a bit. So I don't actually need to knit it as long as I actually ultimately want it, because I know it's going to block longer. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense, doesn't it? So I think what I worked out is I need to knit to about 12.5 inches. But then you see, I paused on this because I've no idea how long to knit a cardigan that's fairly cropped. I have no idea. So I'm going to do a bit of measuring and just make sure it's not going to be... I really don't want it too long at all. I would rather have it a bit cropped. And that actually, you know, if I stretch it out, because once it's blocked, it's going to sort of stretch out a little bit.
I don't think you're far off at all.
I don't think I'm far off. I mean, if you
Not
look...
when you consider...
But I don't know where the armhole is going to be. This is the other thing, because I just don't know what this construction is going to look like. It's a drop shoulder, isn't it? So I don't think the armhole is going to be right under your arm. Do you know what I mean? I think it might be down a bit. So that is going to mean that it's longer again. It's longer, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I really don't want to make the mistake of making this too long. So I think I'm really at that point. So what I've been doing the past few days is just pondering over the next stage, because the next stage is what I've got to do is knit the fronts and the back. But to do that, obviously, I've got to sort of split them off. With this construction, there's like under the arms, you cast off some stitches on like both the front and the back piece. So you have like a notch, if you like, under the arms. And what that does is it takes out a lot of the bulk that you can get under your arms when it's a drop shoulder construction. That's as I understand it. So what I've got to work out is how many stitches are going to work for me, because I've put in this stitch pattern. So how many stitches are going to work to cast off under the arm, and then it's really a case of what I'm going to do is do one front. So I will work across to a certain point, bind off some stitches, and then I'll be turning and just working on that front piece, and all the other stitches will go on hold.
Are you doing the sleeves plain?
Yes. So then I'll work the front, and then I'll come back and like put the back stitches back on the needle and work the back, and then the same for the front.
And you were going to do the poofy sleeves, weren't you?
Yeah, and then when that's all done, I think what you then do is I would join the shoulder seams up here, and then what the pattern tells you to do is to join the shoulder seams, and then you would pick up for the neck. So I could do that. I could join the shoulder and then do the neck and do the sleeves last, or I could do it the other way around. I don't think it would make a difference. But instead of knitting the sleeves sort of cuff up, I'm just going to pick up stitches around the armhole, because I've got the numbers like for the sleeve as to what it should be when you reach the top, effectively, where you would normally sew them together. So I know what that number is. So in theory, I can just pick up that number of stitches and I know that it'll be right. And then my plan was just really to knit down and have like a balloon sleeve, and then just do some rapid decreases at the cuff.
I think that'll work.
And I think that might look quite nice, mightn't it?
It'd be nice and comfortable too.
Yeah, and they'll be plain. The sleeves will be plain, because
I think that's the right thing. I think that will make that stand out more.
Too busy.
Yeah,
you know, I've got this beautiful lace pattern, and it is gorgeous. Got this lovely lace pattern.
It's going to frame it.
Yeah, and I've got garter top and bottom. I did originally swatch it with 1x1 rib at the bottom, and it does look nice. But I just decided that I wanted garter, and I'm glad I went with garter. And then I've done the button bands are included as well. Because again, in that book, I think you pick up for the button bands and then knit them. I've included those as well. And I'm adding buttonholes as I go along. It looks about right. Yeah. I've put 4 in so far. And I've ordered some buttons, actually. I even started thinking about the buttons because I thought that would kind of push me on. if I had the buttons. And what I really wanted was some crystal buttons. I wanted some Swarovski crystal buttons, and I've discovered that they're quite hard to find in this country. Certainly the ones I wanted some that sort of coordinated with the fabric rather than standing out, you know, just like a plain crystal or a coloured crystal. I wanted some that were dark, that would blend in a bit more, so you'd get that little bit of a sparkle, but they wouldn't jump out at you. And I found some, but I've had to order them from Europe, so I'm sure they'll arrive at some point. Hopefully I'll show you those next time, maybe.
I love how it sort of looks here
against
the...
I know, and you will, the pattern's really lovely. It's just a really simple lace pattern, and it does produce like a little wave.
Yeah, and it's that wave against the button band that looks so
I think
lovely.
it might block a bit that anyway, but you can see...
I hope it doesn't block too much.
I hope it doesn't block too much. Yeah. This was blocked months ago, and it's a testament to the yarn, really, because it still looks really gorgeous. It does, yeah. I blocked this literally months ago. So the yarn is BC Garn Samilla.
And I hope you didn't duck then, watching at home.
Looked like it was going to come out of the screen.
Imagine if this was in 3D. That'd be so cool, wouldn't it?
And this colourway is burnt orange is the colour, and it's just gorgeous. This yarn is so lovely. I can't recommend this yarn enough. I mean, obviously I've not worn this thing yet, but I've been knitting it for quite a long time. I've knit a big chunk of fabric. I've washed and blocked that swatch, and it's just gorgeous. It's an organic yarn. It's 100% wool, and I don't know what sort of wool it is, but it's really lovely and soft, and it does say that it's machine washable at 30 degrees, and I'm not going to do that. It does say that, it's not tumble dry, but it does say 30 degrees. I'm just absolutely not going to do that. And I think it's sort of like a sport weight. I don't know what this is sold as, but to me it's sort of like a sport weight. It's 160 metres to 50 grams. So I think that's about a sport, isn't it? And I'm using 3.25mm needles. And the thing that makes this project for me such a joy is the combination, it's the whole thing, but you know what I'm like about yarn and just lovely yarn. And it's a combination of the yarn and the needles, and it's just, it's so lovely. And I'm using higher bamboos. These ones are fixed. I just love these needles. I love higher bamboos. They're just gorgeous. They've got just the right amount of grip for me, but still being lovely and smooth, and they're so nice and pointy. For wooden needles, they're really lovely and pointy. And it's the whole experience, really, of knitting it. But look at that colour. Is that colour not? And that's true to, you know, it's more probably like this in the background, I would say. But it does sort of glow. I do think that's probably about long enough, actually, for the body. So, yeah, you know, I've been working on it and loving it. And I want to get sort of well into the next stage now, but I'm just taking my time because I want to make sure that I don't mess up. I can't mess up. I've just got to be sure of myself, and because this is all new to me, you know, I've obviously never designed my own cardigan before. It's entirely new, and I have no idea how it's going to come out. But it's really a fun process, and I've you know, like I say, I've loved picking it back up again. It's just been a joy. So I will keep you posted on my lovely cardigan.
Excellent.
Dan Jones.
Yes.
What's on your needles?
You've moved the blockers.
No, it's down here, Dan.
I was looking for it.
It was clanging on the desk.
I was thinking that my eyes weren't working right.
Look at those colours together. Oh, isn't that just gorgeous?
It is gorgeous.
It's like a little autumnal... Oh.
Yeah, now I was hoping that today I would be able to sort of wax lyrical about
so warm.
Autumnal and it feeling a bit autumnal. Well, it was, and now it isn't. It's like...
so muggy.
It's gone all like humid and horrible.
It's horrible.
It happened yesterday.
Yeah, it did.
And it's just stuck. So really hoping that... we'll
really
wait and see.
Humid and claggy and gross.
But at least we've had some rain.
We have.
Yes, it's been marvellous.
Yes.
Moss Ecclesop in yarn dyed for me by Kate. Now this one I messed up a bit because
What did you do? I forget.
I had to join yarn
yes.
because I got it caught in my bag.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, what a total fool.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, so got the yarn caught in my bag, so I had to cut and rejoin, and then made an error. And you tinked back, I think.
I did.
Yeah. And then we had words. I decided that I needed to knit on socks constantly and to concentrate. And the sort of idea was that this would be the tester to see that if I did that, would it work for me? Well, it has, because since that mistake, I've knitted all the way through there without a problem, and then I've now knitted all the way through, and that's virtually the whole leg. I've only got one more repeat to do without a problem, and I've learned so much about, you said it, I've learned so much about myself as a sort of knitter of smaller projects with fingering weight. It needs, to me, it needs a higher level of concentration than knitting a fingering weight, not a fingering weight, a jumper. Is it, what weight do I use mainly for jumpers? The letter low peak? Is that like a sport DK?
No.
Sorry.
It's like an Aran, isn't it? Or worsted, I think. Is it? Let low P? I think it's classed as an Aran. It's certainly a thicker.
Because it doesn't have to go thin sometimes.
Yeah, it's sort of thick and thin, isn't it? So it's the overall
like a
gauge that you get.
Which is cool. But yeah, I've just sort of quite rightly realised that I needed a bit more concentration. So yeah, I've really learned a tremendous amount about myself with regards to the sort of knitting of fingering weight projects, and being able to sort of knit through now and not make a mistake after sort of always making a mistake somewhere on socks, along the way. It's been much more rewarding, and as well just sort of being able to learn more about being able to read the knitting too, which has been really beneficial for me. And also as well, thinking that previously I perhaps haven't thought so much about counting the actual repeats in the shape. You can see there how many repeats you've done because, of the chevron. And previously I haven't done things like that, which is just stupid. So it's been really good to take a much closer look at. I'm basically just thinking a lot more about how I go about stuff. I've gone one row too long on the ribbing, but I was counting, which is just crazy. I don't know.
Well,
But, one row's better than 5 rows, and I think I did that once before.
I can show you how to count your rib whilst it's still on the needles, without using a clicker or anything, if that'll be helpful.
Well, that's what I tried to do, so yeah, do that. I wasn't using the clicker I was clicking the rows, but then I was counting the other one. Oh, I can't remember. Anyway, one row out, that's nothing between friends. Really, really great, really enjoying it. Lovely needles. It's the cubics, total convert to the cubics, which is just great. I find that so much more straightforward as well now, always using my DPN holder too. And that then resolves any potential issues with, as happened with the pieces of home, which I'll show you later on.
You've not got your little stitch marker?
Yeah, I couldn't find it.
You're managing not to go off course?
Oh, I'm going to put it on.
Right.
Because I know where it is. It's downstairs. These were upstairs. And the row counter was downstairs. Not row counter. The thingy. The bulb pin. I'm sort of upstairs, and you're sort of... Do you get that? Where you're sort of ensconced with a project in a particular place, and, it would take quite a lot of effort, and you'd be out of the zone then by the time. So I've just been really focused and just concentrating. But I am going to put it on. I knew that when I brought them down for today, that would be the perfect opportunity to go find the bulb pin and stick it on the front.
There you go.
Easy peasy.
I mean, the colour's just gorgeous. I do love a sock that is just all one colour.
Yeah.
I think especially when it's a lace sock.
Yeah.
Because you want to see the lace, don't you? And sometimes a contrast cuff, heel and toe or whatever can pull your eye, can't it? So I think it's just really nice. I do really like a sock just all in one colour. And saves on ends as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always good.
Yeah.
Although I do think that I get a certain amount of reward from weaving in ends because
I don't mind it.
I'm learning.
I know a lot of people.
Well, the thing is, it's sort of important to be able to do it.
Oh, absolutely. You can't avoid it, can you? At some point in your knitting life, you're going to have to weave in some ends.
I'd rather do a good amount fairly often so that the skill remains current. If you don't, then you're always going to be struggling with it. And I don't dislike it in the slightest. It's one of the elements which makes up a finished project. So, lovely to do this, but equally, I didn't have a problem with that one where I had extra ends thanks to me breaking my yarn. Oh dear. What else is on your needles?
Okay, so I've got a lovely sock, and in fact I'm going to show you 2 socks within this project.
Wow.
Because things have moved on with it. Very exciting things. Now, these socks are the Rumple Socks.
Oh, yes.
That I showed you last time. And if you remember, I'll pop this one on the blocker because I've finished the first one and I'm halfway through the second one. And I've also got another pair on the needles that I'm going to show you. So this is the first one. All finished and looking extremely lovely. Haven't washed it yet. So this is just straight off the needles. And this is, let me show you the stitch pattern. Oh, how lovely is that? So it's this, so these socks are inspired by lovely Rumple or Mr. Gold from Once Upon a Time. And I wanted to make Bryony some socks because we've actually finished watching the whole thing now. We've finished the last season and Bryony was literally sobbing at the end. I was sat there going, oh gosh. She's going to cry, she's going to cry, she's going to cry. The poor girl was just sobbing. I won't tell you what happens at the end because you might not have seen it and I don't want to spoil it for you. But it was happy but also sad. So there were a combination of happy and sad tears. These socks were in homage to Rumple, to Mr. Gold. And I put in this stitch pattern that reminded me of his hair of when he's Rumple. Because it's all it's quite long to his shoulders and it's sort of wavy and rumply. So I'll put in this stitch pattern and it's just gorgeous. It's just knits and pearls. Someone said, oh, it looks cabley, and it does look cabley, but it's not. It's just knits and pearls and it's so lovely to knit. And I've put in my butterfly heel, which is a mock short row heel, and then my umbrella toe. And I've started on the second one and I've just put the heel in. You can see the heel is there. And now I'm working down the foot. It is really nice sometimes to not have to think about gusset decreases, I've got to say, and just put in a heel and carry on knitting. That is really lovely. This heel works particularly well with this pattern because it's so stretchy, because it's based on a rib. Can you see how stretchy that is?
Amazing. So
because you've got that stretch over like your instep, I think this type of a heel is a great one to use because it's not like you don't need to necessarily worry about not having the stretch over the instep because you've got so much stretch within the sock. So I think it's a good one for putting in a heel like that. And I've loved this stitch pattern so much that what I actually did, because I said to you last time, if you remember, that it was a repeat, that it's a 16 stitch repeat, the pattern that I've used. And I said, I don't know whether that's even going to be possible to make fit the sort of standard 3 sizes of sock, but I spent some time with a squared notebook because I do like using a squared notebook. I don't design on a computer at all. I use a notebook and a pencil. So I just sort of started playing around with the stitch pattern and I've actually managed to adjust the stitch pattern to make it fit all 3 sizes. So you don't get, I know sometimes with a stitch pattern you'll have, like for the other sizes you might have that you've got to work a repeat plus a half or something. It's not that. It fits perfectly. I've actually physically changed the stitch pattern to either add in more stitches or to take away more stitches. I've made adjustments to it and I swatched. I'm actually knitting the larger size one for Dan. I'm going to show you that in a second. And then I swatched the smaller size one just to see what it would look like, and all 3 of them look absolutely beautiful. So I'm knitting a pair for Dan. Now this actually raises a really interesting point, I think, with design in general, because I said at the time that I was using this stitch pattern that I got from a stitch dictionary. Someone pointed out that there was a pattern on Ravelry that uses this stitch pattern and that it was free. I wasn't aware of it, so I went and had a look at it. The stitch count of the free pattern is for 80 stitches. Now, what a lot of people had realised is that actually it fits a 64 stitch. So they must have just taken the stitch pattern and then added their own heel and toe. But the pattern itself that's free is for 80 stitches, and also the length of the repeat is different to the one I've used. So although it's the same sort of 16 stitch pattern, the length of the repeat isn't the same as what I've used for this sock. And also,
so
like I
that'll
say,
make that sock more grippy then, because if
well,
the
possibly. The repeat of the free pattern was shorter than the one I've done.
Right.
So it would have looked a bit more like that, if you know what I mean. And it's an 80 stitch pattern, so like the heel and the toe is for 80 stitches, it's not really
I don't think
common.
I've ever seen an 80 stitch.
No, it's not really a common sock size at all. And because I'd spent time adjusting this and swatching it and changing it so that it would fit all three sizes, and obviously then there'd be heels and toes for all three sizes, it's a complete pattern. I don't feel like I can't put that out as a paid for pattern just because there is that free pattern sat there. It's a really difficult thing for me because I have had issues in the past. It can get a bit unpleasant with regards to designs. And also, I haven't put designs out when I've discovered that the stitch pattern has already been used. You know, I've done that before and subsequently actually regretted it because there has been differences. So it's a very interesting thing. But then I think, fairly recently, there's been 2 sock patterns that I've seen that have come out that have been paid for patterns that have used the same stitch patterns that I'd already used in socks. Now, I don't have an issue with that because I know that all designers work from the same catalogue of stitches. And
sometimes you do come up with something.
But sometimes people use the same thing, don't they? I've seen numerous cardigan designs, for example, where it might have a similar or same stitch pattern in, but there'll be a lot of other differences. So
I think it's quite straightforward. What you're paying for when you buy anything that's teaching you something is that way of that person teaching it to you.
Absolutely. And you've got the choice. You've got the choice. If you don't want to buy it, don't buy it. You know, for example, my sock pattern, one of them is Mrs. Tiggy, and I put that out in whatever, I can't remember the year, but then a year later another designer put out a sock that used the same stitch pattern as my Mrs. Tiggy. Now, I don't have an issue with that at all because this happens, and you know, the ribs were different, the heels were different, and it's your choice, isn't it? It's your choice whether you purchase that particular designer and her way of writing patterns or whether you choose me and my way of writing patterns. It isn't that one person's copied another person at all, and I don't have an issue with that. So I sometimes think if someone's had an issue with me under the same circumstances, I find that a bit, let's just look at the bigger picture kind of thing, and let's just acknowledge that these things can happen and that everybody's got a choice, haven't they? And just let people choose. All that being said, I am going to carry on with these, and I think I am going to write it up and I'm going to put them out as a pattern because I've really enjoyed knitting them and I've spent time.
Yeah, the bottom line is that as a knitter looking at a product to purchase, okay, I could get an 80 stitch one for free, but actually I'm going to have to do a whole lot of work to make it fit my foot.
Yeah.
Or I could go and pay a little bit of money to get someone to have already done that work for me.
Yes.
And that, it seems to me, is certainly what people want when they're buying stuff.
Yeah.
That certainly seems to me what comes across to us, to people who talk to us after they bought stuff, is they're looking for complete patterns.
Yeah.
And that's what you do.
Yes.
Even your free patterns are complete patterns.
Absolutely. Yeah. And,
Actually, I've seen recently an awful lot of free patterns which aren't free because you get bombarded with adverts.
This also...
Be careful out there, people.
I've come across this recently as well, and I was watching something, and this particular podcaster kept saying that she got free patterns on her blog of loads of different things, and I thought, I'll just go and have a look at her blog because I really like her podcast. And I went and had a look, and I looked at a few of the free patterns, And although the pattern was there and it was free, I was getting ads every sentence. So I told you about this, didn't I? And I said, I find that a little bit irritating. And then Dan said, well, it's not actually free, is it? Because they're using you to gain advertising
Because you get
revenue.
You get paid from the advertisers
Yeah,
per visit.
and then it's sort of... I sort of twigged
Go ahead
as
and
to
do
why...
it, but don't try and say, oh yeah, this is free. It isn't. You're being paid for it.
No, so, when a pattern of mine is free, it's free. You can just go and download it on Lovecrafts and on Ravelry. There's no advertising on Ravelry. Or on Lovecrafts, I don't think. You can just go and download the PDF and it is completely free. I think if something is going to be free, it should be free. If you say it's free... Yeah. It should be free. It shouldn't be, it's free if you sign up for my newsletter. I see that a lot as well. You'll see a free pattern on Ravelry and you'll click on the link and it's like, put all your details in here and then you can download it. Well, that's not free, is it? Anyway, off my soapbox, and I'll show you this other sock, this other Rumple sock. And look, this one's for Dan. Now, so it's the same stitch pattern, but this is on a 72 stitch sock and it fits perfectly. Now this one I've put in a heel flap and a turn because heel flap and turn just fits in better. So I think actually in the pattern I'm going to give both the heels as an option and then it's up to you which one you want to use. But what's really interesting for this sock is I actually dyed this yarn and I dyed it in a particular way to try and experiment and it seems to so far be working. This is one ball of yarn, this is one skein of yarn. And do you know how quite often you can get skeins of sock yarn where you knit two socks and the second sock kind of looks different to the first sock because of the way it's been dyed? I suddenly had a revelation and I thought, well, what if, to minimise the sort of difference between the two socks, what if you pulled from the centre for the cuffs, heels and toes and then pulled from the outside for the body of the sock. So then you'll be using less yarn in sequence, if you know what I mean, for each of the socks. And therefore you would minimise, hopefully, I don't know if it's going to work fully, but you might minimise the difference between sock 1 and 2. So I've been doing this with this pair and look at the difference. So I deliberately dyed up some yarn for this to happen. I did this on purpose, so that the sort of second half of the skein would look quite different to the first. And by different, I just mean that the concentration of some of the dyes was less in the second half. You've all seen socks that are like this, haven't you? Or you might have even knit them, where you get more sort of red in one sock than the other or whatever. And I think it's brilliant. So I knit the cuff from the centre and then the leg, these are just shorties. So that's why it's like 30 odd rounds. So the leg from the main part of the, from the outside of the ball. And then I went and knit the cuff of the other before I knit the heel because I wanted both cuffs to start at the beginning of the yarn so that they was the same. So I've got the second cuff and then I knit the heel from the centre of the ball. And now I'm going to do the leg all the way down, the foot, all the way down. And then when I've knit the foot of this one, I can break the yarn, go back to this one, knit the leg on this one. You can see what I'm getting at. So that I'm actually, when I'm pulling from the centre, I'm doing it in tandem. So I'm doing both cuffs from the same bit, both heels from the same bit, and then both toes from the same bit. So that if it changes, because it's bound to, the change will look the same on all three, cuffs, heels and toes. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if this works out, then, how brilliant is that? If you've got a skein of yarn that you look at it and you think, I know that's going to happen with that, then do that. Cuffs, heels and toes, pull from the centre. The rest of the sock from the outside is going to coordinate perfectly because it's the same ball of yarn. So this is the yarn I dyed up. And you can probably see the outside has got lots of this purple and the inside not so much. So that's how I've dyed it deliberately to do that. So we'll see what happens. But I think so far, it looks super lovely. You can see the stitch pattern. There we go. So yeah, 2 projects on the go at the same time for the same thing, but I think it's all really interesting.
Yeah.
So I've had lots of sort of interesting things going on. So I'm hoping to get the gold sock finished in the next couple of weeks and show you that finished pair next time.
Cool, look, it's the Pieces of Home Knit, that's the first one. It's using the change of yarn colour thingy. What's that called?
Zauber ball.
Crazy Zauber ball. So continuing on with my Pieces of Home Knits, well into just about to hit the decreases now. And yet look, that keeps because this was the one which I pulled off the needles, which was an absolute disaster. But now, thanks to my superb holder made by Coach, which is just wonderful, it keeps it all absolutely perfect. So there we go. So I made loads of progress since the last time you saw this into the decreases, and the thumbs don't take long at all. Actually, I found that out on the first. I mean, granted, this is fingering weight, but you know, there's so few stitches on there. You know, I'm really hopeful I might get this finished relatively soon now, because I should get that done really quite quickly. And the whole the carrying of the yarns with the fingering weight, you know, I've really been working hard on that, because I've not done a lot of fingering weight colourwork projects, maybe 2 or 3 of them, so it's been really good to really sort of sink my teeth into that and start to get a bit better at it, because I do want to get good at fingering weight colourwork, and that's the reason why I designed the Hadrians Cowl, which I'm also knitting at the moment too, which is just marvellous. But that is my lovely Pieces of Home Knits, again with the gorgeous square needles, and looking forward to knitting the thumb gussets actually, because I did enjoy that with the Starnum mitts, which I finished recently and showed you, I think, last show or the show before. I really did enjoy doing the thumbs. Kay picked up the first one, I picked up the second one, then we were off, which was really cool.
Yeah.
What else is on your needles?
Okay, so the last thing I've got to show you this time is a new bedtime project. Because it's still still too horribly warm at night to go back to my bedtime blanket. But now that
it's all your fault.
It's all my fault.
Because you said, should we wash the sheet and put it away?
I did, and then you used it that night yesterday, I know. Because Dan, when it's really hot, Dan just sleeps under a sheet. So I said yesterday morning, should we put this away now? Because you've not really been under it, have you? So I washed it, folded it, put it on the bed to put away, and then last night it was back underneath it. So anyway, but yeah, it's still too warm to go back to my bedtime blanket. But actually, you know, I was worried that I'd just put it down and hadn't touched it for ages. But now I've had this revelation of you can put something down and it won't implode or like go off, or you know, all of the other things that I think about. I'm quite chilled about it, which I'm not normally with things like that, but I am looking forward to getting back to it. But I reckon it's going to be well into September before it's cool enough to get out a big blanket of an evening. So I thought I need something else to work on at night time, and I've started just a little scrappy, really plain cowl, but it's just perfect. It's just the perfect thing. So what I did for this cowl is that I thought, right, okay, I'm going to pull out 12 10-gram minis, because I know that's roughly about how much yarn I use when I'm knitting a nice length of cowl. And I'm just going to work my way through these minis. So I thought I'll do a nice rib, and I chose a rib that I've not done before actually, and I really like it. And then I'm just going to do it plain knitting all the way up, and then the rib at the top. And I'm using lots of minis from my, what seems to never end, birthday gift, my 50th birthday gift from my lovely friend who gave me all of these 10-gram minis. There was 50 of them. I'm using them for another project. I did want to put them all into one thing, and I started doing that. But then for whatever reason, I just thought, I like this little group together, so I might put these in something and then these in something else. So I've actually ultimately, they've ended up being part of several things. But I think that's fine, isn't it? So, but it's all these little balls. Oh, look, this one, we don't know what that one is. But I chose a bunch of really pretty sort of soft colours that actually I realise now they're all sort of pinks and creams and blues. That one's West Green Lofts, look. So yeah, I've got 10 of those, and I'm just working my way through this cowl, and I think it's looking lovely. However, I had an issue with the first yarn, but I've gone with it, which again is not like me.
That first yarn, it looks like pink khaki.
What's khaki?
Khaki's like army wear. If you like made that brown and that green.
Maybe it would. Yeah, I had an issue with the first yarn. Can you see what my issue is? Yes, you can absolutely see what my issue is with that first yarn. We've got some pooling, and I thought, I can't look at this. I can't bet. You know what I'm like?
It's awful.
I was like, I can't look at it. I can't even. I'm going to have to rip this out. And then I'm like, do you know what? I'm not. Because I chose this particular mini because of colours. Gorgeous. Pinks, blues, and a bit of speckle. I thought that would be beautiful. Well, it's not.
How wrong you could be.
It's not. Everybody's different, aren't they? And everybody's opinions will be different about this. But that, to me, is not pretty. But
looks like it's been sponged on by a 5-year-old.
it does. It just looks blobby. This is the sort of pooling I don't like. It just looks blobby, doesn't it? But, you know, I decided to go with it for several reasons. One was that it looked lovely in the little mini skein. And the colours were right. 2, I thought, you've got to chill about this, you know. But also, I thought, by the time I've knit in all the others, it might just all blend. And also, when it's round my neck, I'll have this at the bottom, so it's all scrunched up and you won't see it. So my being chilled about it is not necessarily really working, because I don't think it's nice at all. And it probably would have knit up differently. Well, it would have knit up differently into socks or something, wouldn't it? And I don't normally get pooling on something of this kind of circumference. You can see the other 2 yarns are lovely, aren't they? Gorgeous. And then that. Hey ho, you know, it's a talking point. But the rib, can you see the rib? Isn't that lovely? It's called a mistake rib because it must have been discovered when a knitter knit it by mistake, presumably, because it's knit 1 purl 1, but then it's offset for the round 2, so you go wrong basically. But I love it.
Well, maybe someone knitted it and messed up and then thought, oh no, actually I really like that.
Yeah, maybe so, but I think it looks brilliant. I really love it. It wouldn't be stretchy enough for socks. It's not got enough sucky in for socks. But for a cowl, you know, or the edge of a jumper or whatever, I think it's lovely. Really pretty. So I use 1 mini for that, and it looks shorter than the others because it just takes up so much more yarn, you know, when you've got knits and pearls, just takes up so much more yarn than plain knitting. So I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, I've just started the 5th of my minis, and it's just lovely, isn't it? And I love the colours, the pinks and the blues, and then those blobby colours at the bottom. Hey ho. I will think of it with fondness, won't I? When I look at it, when I wear it,
it will make it
me
more
smile.
memorable.
It will. Absolutely. Yeah.
You'll probably
absolutely.
still have that in like 20 years, and you won't be able to find any of the other ones.
I know, and I'll say, do you remember that?
Yes.
When I moaned about that yarn, it looks like somebody's gone over it with
I
a
still
felt
hate it
tip.
even now. But it keeps me warm on my walks.
Absolutely. And I think overall the colours are lovely, aren't they? Once it's scrunched up, you won't see that bottom bit. So yeah, it's lovely. Just fingering weight, 3mm, I think, or 3.25, I forget which now. So just lovely, simple bedtime knitting.
Right, folks, it's time to get down to business. Earlier on this year, we started a series discovering the story of Hadrian's Wall, and over the last 5 walks, we've covered the building of the wall, we've learnt, haven't we, about the people who lived there, we've looked into the upgrades that were done to the wall that caused people to think that it wasn't built by Hadrian for like 1,000 years.
Yeah.
But today we start a really epic story. It's the beginning of the story which tells us how the Romans got to the precipice which led them to abandoning Britain and also abandoning Hadrian's Wall. This is Walking the Wall.
Welcome everyone to Northumberland. This is perhaps my favourite county in all of England. Rolling hills make some absolutely wonderful vistas and gorgeous landscapes to look out on, and scattered in between those hills are some of the most unique and unforgettable little villages. In this series, over 7 walks, we're exploring Hadrians Wall, the epic monument built by the Romans nearly 2,000 years ago to mark the edge of their vast empire.
As we walk through this gorgeous landscape, we're finding out what an awesome job they did. Our constant companion is the vast Valum Hadriani. This was the ditch which protected the south side of the 73-mile wall, which stretched from coast to coast. But that was just the start of this monumental piece of engineering. We visited enigmatic turrets, discovered the story behind the many mile castles along the line of the wall, and last time we uncovered some of the secrets of Sycamore Gap, a place made famous thanks to its Hollywood connections. This time we're back for a walk through one of the most archaeologically rich landscapes I've ever visited.
Long before the Romans arrived here in what would become Britannia, hundreds of pathways used to spread out in the landscape before us. But they all used to congregate in the land just behind me at what's called the Haltwhistle Burn. This was the place which the Celtic tribes used to cross the really high peaks of the Great Wind Sill. Now, when the Romans arrived, because of the Celtic tribes using this spot so much, they built 7 forts here to protect it, and then they ploughed Hadrian's Wall straight through the centre of it. This is, I'm told, one of the most spectacular sections of all of Hadrian's Wall, and I can't wait to walk it. This is a walk where we'll meet up with old friends from the series whose work helped preserve this outstanding landmark for us to enjoy today. We'll also start to tell the beginning of the story of the end of the Roman Empire. Welcome to Walking the Wall. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my favourite part of the world. This is, of course, Northumberland, known by so many as Hadrian's Wall country. Now, we've moved 5 miles west of our last walk. We're a mile east of the farm of Great Chesters, which is just over that way, and we're a mile north of the town of Haltwhistle, and this is going to be quite an adventure. Today, we've travelled to an area that's absolutely littered with the archaeological remains of Roman activity. In fact, I think in all my years of exploring, I don't think I've ever spotted a portion of land with so many things to see in one space before. The question you've got to ask, though, is, why have I never come here to explore before? The answer is actually simple in one sense and highly embarrassing in another. We've learned in this series, haven't we, that people head to the absolute highlights of Hadrian's Wall and they sort of miss out on some of the best bits. And we've covered the highlights in the last 2 walks, because in episode 4 we visited Vercovicium, which is the best preserved of all the forts on Hadrian's Wall. And last time in episode 5, we followed in the footsteps of Kevin Costner, didn't we, as we walked past Sycamore Gap. But in the first 3 episodes in this series, that's where we really sort of branched out, or certainly I did, because for years I've just been coming here with blinkers on, and I've headed to the places which sort of society dictates are the places you go to when you come to visit Hadrian's Wall, and it's just wrong, because the highlights, the best bits, are actually not the bits which you're sent to. It's the bits with just, you know, a few less people and equally as wonderful remains. Now today we're going to get back to that trend that we set in the first 3 episodes, and we're going to branch off the beaten track, and we're going to go in search of some truly outstanding sites, because in today's walk we're going to walk by no less than 8 fort earthworks. Just unbelievable. I had no idea they were here. We're also going to uncover the story of Aesica Fort, which is just over that way. It's just a stone's throw from here. We're actually starting our walk at Aesica. But also we're going to walk along a stretch of wall which I'm told, I've never walked this section before, I've only been to this car park once before, and I only stopped in the car park for a few minutes and then drove on. What a fool. We're going to walk along what I'm told is the greatest stretch of wall, with wall standing at, shock horror, I had no idea, 14 courses high. This is going to be quite an adventure, and I cannot wait to get started. So we've just set off and we've already found a Roman fort. What you've just looked at was a complete Roman fort. I know there wasn't much to see. Tantalising, I think it is, because what you saw was just as big and just as important as the fort that we saw at Vercovicium. It's all been dug, it's all still there, but it's covered over with the grass to stop it just disappearing with the weather hitting the stones. Now, what makes Aesica Fort so unique is it was built completely south of the wall, just a few feet. Normal forts, one of their walls was Hadrian's Wall. This fort, completely separate, so it was an afterthought. Well, just a few years afterthought, wasn't it? The other thing that was missing was running water. Now, what I love about Romans is their approach is very straightforward. You find something that works and stick to it. So forts were always fairly sort of card shaped. They always had all the buildings in similar places, so you always knew where you were, and they always had running water. So the question you've got to ask yourself is, why on earth did they make that exception here? Well, the answer lies just at the foot of that ridge over there. Even with the building of Hadrian's Wall, this created a serious problem to the Romans. New to this landscape, they had no idea where all these paths were beginning and ending, and they really only had one choice, and that was to fortify the manpower in this area and to build Aesica Fort, which we've just seen over there. And to counteract their problem with water, they built an aqueduct which once would have stood proud on the horizon, running right the way over to its source, over sort of to the northeast. And we're going to look for the path of that aqueduct later on in today's walk. Now, I mentioned, didn't I, that there was lots of Roman fort footprints, lots of archaeological remains in the landscape. We can see right here, this was the outer ditch to a great Roman fort that we're walking past right now. It's another one, another fort on top of that one that was over there, Aesica. This one, we've got no idea what it was called, but my goodness, it was big. This fort formed part of what was known as the Staingate system. Now, the Staingate was actually a road, and it ran from the west to the east. And this was built before Hadrian's Wall was even thought of, but it pretty much follows the same line. The purpose of that road was initially to enable troops to move from east to west really quickly. And wherever there was sort of pockets of Celtic resistance where there was lots of fighting, inevitably loads of forts would spring up. And that fort that we've just looked at was one of 7 more, actually 8 if you include Aesica. So there must have been some serious resistance going on here. You have to wonder, don't you, at the pompousness of the planners of Hadrian's Wall, because they would have known that they previously needed 7 forts, but they must have thought, oh, this wall's going to be so impressive, no one's going to dare get close. They were, of course, completely wrong, and Aesica was built to solve that problem. So our walk today is once again going to take us quite a distance north of Hadrian's Wall. We've started off in a car park, and I've walked about half a mile past all those forts. I've then just turned north, sort of northeast now, and we're heading up towards Clayfoot Farm in the hope that we might just be able to spot in the landscape where that aqueduct for Aesica once ran to feed that fort with water. After we've done that, we're going to turn south, we're going to cross the Holtwhistle Burn, which we've already seen a little bit of today, haven't we? And then we're going to pick up what I'm told is one of the greatest sections to walk of Hadrian's Wall in all of this part of the world. And personally, I think that's quite a claim, because of all we've seen so far. But I'll be honest with you, the more I've researched this walk, the more excited I've become. Before we see all that though, my goodness, I've got some serious walking to do. This must have been such a strange time to live in the Roman Empire. because around here things would still have felt pretty good. The upgrades to Hadrian's Wall, which had been done in 208 AD, would still have looked good round about sort of 300, and it would have given you a sort of feeling that, do you know what, everything's going to be all right. The problem was the rot had sort of already started to set in, because in 280 AD, Germanic raiders coming in on boats, they discovered northern Britain, and they discovered it was really sort of quite rich. There were some wealthy people here, and they would come in and they would raid, very similar to the Vikings, who would turn up about 400 years later. They adopted a very similar approach, and unfortunately they learned very fast that the Roman army in this part of the world was becoming... The men themselves weren't efficient, but the orders above were just not coming through quite the way that they had done. But this was not a quick fall. It took about 200 years for Rome to finally go. And here, on the edge of the empire, things must have felt really weird, because whilst the messages that were coming from home were decidedly grim, Roman Britain was just really finding its feet. Eboracum, York, modern day York to you and me, was as vibrant a city as anywhere in the empire. And York wasn't alone, Corbridge as well. It's not far from here at all, was another thriving Roman city, which around about the start of the 4th century, 300 AD, it was just finding its feet. It must have felt decidedly odd that your economy's booming, everything's feeling good locally, but the wolves were definitely at the door, because the messages coming from Rome were concerning. The question many of you may be pondering about now is, what was it that brought the Roman Empire to the brink of collapse? And this is a thing that historians have pondered on for generations. Some think the empire got too big and it was just too unwieldy to control. Others think Hadrian building his wall and putting a boundary on and not pushing out any further was the problem, because that went against everything that Rome had been for generations. I think it was much simpler than that. Rome's leaders at this time weren't elected. It was hereditary, so if someone was bad, you couldn't get rid of them. Well, the only way you could get rid of them was by assassinating them. And that's why this whole problem arose. If Rome's leaders had still been elected, if Julius Caesar hadn't done what he did in 49 BC, there's every chance they may just have been able to avoid the enemy that was at the gates right now. I just love aqueducts. I've never seen one in this country, a Roman one. I've seen one in France, which was just amazing. They're just fascinating structures, especially when you consider how old they are. Now, it's quite complex. The start of the aqueduct is about 5 miles in that direction in a place called Corbin. And it's obviously a collection of water. And then next to that, as the sort of decline begins, because basically it's just like a bridge that's slowly getting further and further, lower and lower down, so it starts high and gradually gets lower. At the top end, there was like these inspection shafts, so the Roman engineers could always make sure that the water that was then flowing down was nice and pure. Then, after the inspection shafts, there was a settling tank so that if there was anything dodgy that was still in the water, it would sink to the bottom, and only the water, the lovely water, would stay at the top and flow down. And then it would go into a covered sort of, it's all the arches, they look like sort of railway bridges, I think, and they're arched all the way down with a covered channel on the top that then runs all the way down to wherever the places that you want the water to go to. In this case, starts up there, runs about 7-8 miles down there to Asaker, and Asaker Fort, take your bucket, you've got fresh mountain water every morning. That's not bad, is it? So we've left the course of that aqueduct behind as we turn towards the whole reason why there was all this Roman activity in the first place. It's that little river that we saw earlier on. It's the Haltwhistle Burn. Now, the last time I came looking for a river crossing like this, it had collapsed, but thankfully I can see on the horizon that this one is there and ready for me to walk across. So I think this is a perfect spot for me to just pause for a minute, have a bit of lunch, and plan the rest of my route. So while I do that, why don't you guys head off for a cup of tea and a little break, and I'll see you later on in the show with more Walking the Wall.
What a fascinating landscape that is, isn't it?
Beautiful.
There's earthworks everywhere. Now, it was a tricky one because you sort of want to like show everything, but I thought much better to focus in on the really big thing, and that was that huge fort. I mean,
Massive.
Granted,
yeah.
all you could see is the outline.
But what would they find if they dug?
Well, it'd probably be insane.
Yeah.
The only issue is it is on a farm. But
They have dug on farms before.
and there's still stuff there.
Yeah.
So actually, probably what's happened is over the years, the farmers, as they've been going over, they probably keep bringing stuff up.
Pulling stuff up, yeah.
I mean, I was just gobsmacked because the other thing as well that was there, and you sort of catch it in the shot where I'm walking across the road and it comes across on the diagonal, you can see the little ditch on the outside of where the wall was. It's just fascinating. I love walking through landscapes like that because you sort of don't... Do you know what? The funny thing is, right, walking the moors and walking the dales, it's all really lovely, but at times, and this is wrong because you're not alone, because, you know, there was Neolithic and there was also, but in a landscape where you can see the impact of us, you never feel alone. You know, I'm out there on my own walking, but I always feel like, I know it sounds silly, you sort of feel like you're amongst friends.
Yeah.
And it makes it like a constant. It's been such a wonderful experience for me filming this series, and it's made me realise that, you know, the dales and the moors are lovely, but you can keep them. Northumberland,
That's a bit harsh, isn't
Northumberland is the county for me. It's just tremendous.
Yeah. They're just different places, aren't they? And everybody likes different things, and they're all beautiful in their own way.
Harking back to episode 1, least visited of all, you know, do you remember in episode 1, I can't remember the exact fact, but like hardly anyone goes there at all.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously the Dales and the Moors, very popular, people go there all the time.
Yeah.
And do you know what? I think there might be an element of that. Over the years, you know, people being there, it sort of erodes.
Yeah, and maybe, you know, people don't go there because if you think...
You've got to work to get there.
You have, you know, and I would say most of the UK's population are probably in that bottom
It gets
bit.
busier, doesn't it, as you get further down, because it starts to widen out.
That's right.
Yeah.
So most people are down here. So for them to get way up to Northumberland, they probably think that's too far. But we'll go to the Dales. That's not too far.
Good.
So
keep doing it. Leave Northumberland
it's
for me.
It's the least populated county, isn't it, in the UK, I think, Northumberland.
It is,
Yeah.
Just wonderful. But still so much to come, because we've not even got to the wall yet.
No.
Oh, yes. But right now, though, it's time for me to ask, Kate Jones, what's off your needles?
So shall I show this lovely hat first?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you've been looking on in awe at my wonderful noggin at the start of every Walking the Wall...
Your wonderful noggin?
Yes,
Does everybody know what a noggin is?
It's this.
It's your head.
This hat
Yeah.
was on my head.
Yeah.
Is on my head. It is blooming marvellous.
It's a lovely hat.
Oh my goodness, it's like perfection.
Yeah, it's called the Moordale Hat, combination of the Moors and the Dales, because I knit it for Dan to wear when he was doing those series.
Well, you knit it for me when I'm out walking.
I did.
Wherever
yeah,
I may be.
Yeah.
But to celebrate walking the malls and walking the dales.
Yes. And I've had the pattern, you know, I thought, I must write that up. And I just finally got to the point. And also I wanted to put it out at a time of year when people would want to knit hats. So September's a good time, isn't it? Because we're getting back into that cooler zone, hopefully, fingers crossed. And you can start knitting your hats again. And I used a lovely yarn. It's the Uncommon Thread. And it was called Everyday Luxury, I think it was. And it's a fingering weight, but it's a really plump fingering weight. I think you only got something like 360 metres to 100 grams. So a very plump fingering weight. So I think you could use maybe a sport weight as well with this. Maybe. Or fingering weight, obviously. Because there's just one size in the pattern, because I knit a size that I knew would fit Dan. So it's a larger size, but also actually I've worn this as well and it's perfectly fine. So it's quite a universal size.
If you imagine it like a gorgeous pink.
Yeah, it's got this lovely cable and some broken garter, which is nice. And I love the crown decreases. With hats, I'm always kind of wanting to get the decreases right. And I got the cables going really into the decreases. Isn't that lovely?
It's gorgeous.
I was really proud of those decreases. And the decreases are charted, everybody.
Come on.
Oh. Amazing, and written as well. So yeah, that's the Moordale Hat, and that will be my next platinum pattern.
It's a big one, this one, because it's the final platinum collection 2022 launch of the year, 1st of September.
Yeah.
Available to gold and platinum patrons.
Yes.
And if ever there was a time to become a gold patron, now is that time, after the 1st of September. Because if you did, you would immediately get access to 4 exclusive patterns that only gold and platinum patrons can access.
Yeah.
Platinum patrons now, I mean, it must be 20 patterns now, at least.
Yeah.
It might even be more. I think it might be more than that with that.
Right.
So platinum patrons immediately have access to every
yeah.
platinum collection pattern. And like I say, there's a specific page on the website, but there's at least 20 patterns on there. And there's some absolute crackers. But this, though, it's my perfect walking hat. Kay was just amazing because she sort of listened to all the things that I said I really want in a hat when I'm out doing some serious walking. And this just, it fits the bill. It fits the bill perfectly. And in, like I say, in every Walking the Wall, this hat has made an appearance.
Yeah.
So that's available from the 1st of September, final Platinum Collection pattern. And now, you know, it's sad that the 2022 Platinum Collection is ending, but now's the moment where we start to get excited.
Yes.
It's when this pattern goes out, that's the moment when you start to think, it's not long now.
Not long.
Till the Baker Bears Advent Calendar.
Till the Advent Calendar, and that's the start of the new year for Platinum patterns, because the design that goes into the Advent Calendar is the first design for the year that we're just about to go into.
This design, talk about put a smile on your face.
It absolutely does. It's like nothing
She's never
I
designed
have ever done before.
Ever, anywhere.
Literally,
Whether
not
it be
even
Ravelry, whether it be...
not even remotely like anything I've ever done before. It is...
I could give you 1,000 guesses and you'd never get it.
But it's so festive. It's so fun.
You're going to love it.
Yes. It's all the festive fun you could possibly want.
All we shall say about that till the 1st of December.
I've been working on it for a while, and I'm towards the end of knitting the sample, but I've not been able to work on it because of all this other stuff going on, and I can't wait to get back to it and get it finished off. So,
speaking of Christmas, what's this?
Yes, so the other finished thing that I've got to show you is my Christingle Mingle is finished. That I was working on.
Yeah.
Oh, it's lovely.
That's really lovely.
So I love all these colours. So the solid colours are Cascade Heritage.
Yeah.
And then just loads of speckles from my stash. One thing I've noticed actually a few times with this design, so this is the Christingle Mingle Cowl. You need 6 speckles and 6 solids to create this. But one thing I've noticed that a few knitters have done is they haven't done this centre section here.
Oh no!
And I know one person actually just made a mistake and didn't do it. And I wonder, but I've seen a few other people who it's just basically all like this.
Yeah.
And they've not done the centre section. Now, that could be a choice and that's fine. You know, you didn't want to do it and that's absolutely fine. But I don't want people to think that this centre section doesn't exist.
Or that it's not important.
Or that it's not important because the reason it's there is a few reasons actually. But you can see you mingle the speckles in the middle. And that's my favourite bit, mingling the speckles in the middle. But the reason it's there primarily is so that the cowl is mirrored. Because if you just carry knitting on in this sort of stitch pattern that's down here, you're not going to
The lines will be at the top, yeah.
You're not going to end up here.
Yeah, you'll end down there.
At the same point as you started down here in the repeat. You'd have to modify the repeat.
It's genius, Kate.
So I wanted to mirror it so that if you folded it in on itself in the centre, one side is the same as the other. And I've mirrored the ribs as well. The sequence of working the rib
I wouldn't have known
mirrored.
that if you hadn't said. So that's really good to know.
So that it ends at exactly the point that you started.
Where?
It's exactly mirrored. So that's why I created this centre section. But actually I've knit 2 of these now and it's become my favourite bit to do because I just love the look of those 2 yarns mingled in the centre. I think it's really lovely and it breaks up, I think, the sort of striping sequence as well.
Gorgeous.
So just wanted to say that in case people didn't realise that you do something different in the middle.
Yeah.
So that's my Christingle Mingle all finished.
Wonderful. And it's time for us to get back because, yes, I want to get to Hadrian's Wall. We've got some climbing to do before we get there, but then the sights on Hadrian's Wall, just amazing. Cracking turret and just a superb mile castle, which you haven't seen yet.
I haven't finished watching it yet.
She hasn't watched it all yet.
No.
Oh, no.
Got to finish watching it today.
Let's watch it together. Oh, yes. Let's get back for more Walking the Wall.
Welcome back to Walking the Wall. I have indeed safely crossed the Holt Whistle Burn. Got to admit, I've had some tricky sort of wet, meandering stream issues today. It's quite boggy, which is funny because we've not had much rain at all. Now you might be wondering, why is that river called Holt Whistle Burn? Well, it's because it is burn. It's a Proto-Germanic word, and Proto-Germanic is a language that was spoken by the late Iron Age people, so the people right before the Romans arrived. And one of the derivatives of burn is actually born. And if you think about it, born, people often referred to that as where a river springs up. So rivers in this part of the world, Northern England, I think in Ireland as well, and also other countries in the world, they use the word burn or born. Now, most notably there, Melbourne. That's actually how Melbourne got its name, because it's the spring of a river at Melbourne, supposedly. And also Bournemouth as well. Bourne. So again, it's where a river springs up. It's interesting stuff, isn't it? As I walk through this just fascinating landscape, it does sort of start to make you ponder, what would it have looked like in Roman times when the wall stood proud over barbarian country beyond? Well, 2 things we know for definite. there would have been an awful lot more trees, and there would have been an awful lot more people. It's really weird to consider, isn't it, that it wasn't until the 18th century, the sort of Industrial Revolution, that we all flocked to the cities, that we all thought living together would be a much better idea. Up until then, really since the dawn of humanity, we'd lived in landscapes like this. So there would have been, in Roman times, lots of people bustling around. That's why all those pathways existed at the Halt Whistle Burn. You've got to wonder as well, what on earth were we thinking? Because as I walk through and I look at this just gorgeous vistas spreading out in every direction in front of me, why have we all flocked to go live in cities when we could be living here? So back in 305 AD, this would have been a bustling, vibrant landscape, still glowing just a little from those upgrades done pretty much 100 years before by Septimius Severus. But it was into this world, into this landscape, that a really sort of fearsome and dangerous new enemy was to appear. If you've seen a film like King Arthur with Clive Owen, which we spoke about actually a little bit earlier on in the series, Clive Owen and Keira Knightley, there's some really fierce warriors in that film, and they're painted. Now, they are based on a real tribe, and the Romans, they spoke Latin, and when they saw them, they called them the Painted. And the Latin for painted is Picti. And today we know that fearsome enemy that burst into this landscape as the Picts. The Roman desire for military success brought one more emperor to the north of England in 305 AD. Emperor Constantius Chlorus arrived to take on the Picts, and he won a decisive battle. But the stress of the battle was so much, he died within a few months of winning it. The Picts had now shown firsthand that they were an enemy really to be reckoned with, and whilst they may have been down, they most certainly were not out. And through it all, Hadrian's Wall stood proud, and we're going to get there in just a moment. We're walking up towards it right now. This really is the way to take in this marvellous monument. You've got to get north of the wall, and you've got to take in the views that the Picts would have seen. My goodness, it's just spectacular. I don't know if you've noticed, but I think it's only the second time this series we've actually got a road to walk on. And whilst it does feel like a little bit of a cheat, I'm a bit concerned about what's coming, because it really does look up and down and up and down. But my goodness, this is going to be fun. We're heading up now towards the Hadrians Wall path. At last! I hear you cry. There's some great things to see actually up here. Let's get cracking. My goodness, we've made it back on the Hadrians Wall path. Oh yes, it's been quite a tough walk today. There's some very tricky terrain out there, lots of boggy conditions. So my goodness, to be back here on this path that we've come to know so well in this series, it feels like we've come home. We're back among friends. But who were those friends in 305 AD? Well, as we discovered in episode 4 when we met the Tungrians from Vercovicium, there wasn't a lot of movement really along the wall. The Tungrians actually arrived in 50 AD, long before the wall was built. And then they were stationed at housesteads and moved up to the wall. And then the job just passed from father to son. So generations of men from the same family all called this place home and all worked here on Hadrian's Wall. What that tells us actually is something quite interesting. You'll often hear people who come and visit Hadrian's Wall talking about the Italians who worked here and how difficult it must have been when you consider the warmer climate that they were used to and the food that they were used to in Italy. Well, the funny thing is, 99% of the people who came here that were part of the Roman Empire were not Italians. They were like the Tungrians. They were recruited in places like Belgium or Germany, or they were locals themselves. So this landscape, it had sort of always been their home. And we're coming up on so many of the landmarks that the men who worked here in 305 AD would have known so well. This is the site, it's all that's left of turret 41A. If you recall from earlier on in the series, we visited one and we learned that they would have stood really tall to give the soldiers a really good view out across barbarian country, looking out for any of those really dangerous Picts. And just coming up ahead as well, we get the rarest of sights, something I just wasn't even aware existed on Hadrian's Wall. It's stones, original stones, standing 14 courses high. I mean, that is just unbelievable. Let's see if we can find it, because this is just, I mean, it's breathtaking stuff. I don't think that was quite 14 there. Let's see, it's a little bit further along because we've got an awful lot of up and downs. Woohoo! It's good to be back though. Look at this. This is it, I think. It's the section people talk about because it's all downhill and it's just constant. One of my most familiar sights actually visiting Hadrians Wall is you'll quite often see wall topped with turf. It was one of the ways which was used to preserve and protect the wall. The wall we're seeing today is not quite like that. They've used a different technique, but both these techniques are all thanks to one man. And he actually gave his name to this type of wall that we're walking along now. This is what they call, what archaeologists called, Claytonized wall. I think the really sort of cool thing is we picked up John Clayton's story in episode 2 of this series, and everything that we've seen since then was all once owned by John Clayton. And not only was it owned, it was protected by John Clayton. So without John Clayton, this series might not have even been possible. Because as we saw before, and as to an extent actually happens afterwards, there's not really very much left. Now, John Clayton's story actually ends very happily. He died in 1890, aged 98. I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? And his estate passed into the hands of his son. His story, unfortunately, doesn't end quite so nicely because he was a bit of a gambler, and his son actually had to sell off his estate to pay his gambling debts. But there is a silver lining because he sold off the estate to the British government, and the British government were just in the process of forming what's now become known as the English Heritage. And English Heritage now own all of Hadrian's Wall, and they preserve it and they look after it, and they've got cottages here that you can come and stay and go on holiday. So it's really thanks to them that this wonderful place is available for us to come and explore today. Now, we've actually piled down quite a lot now, thankfully, because it's really windy up there, off Cawfield Crags, and we're making our way towards one last, what I'm told is an absolute gem of a mile castle. This pretty much marks the end of John Clayton's land. This was the sort of perimeter of his estate. So it's no surprise then that actually, and it looks like, I can just see it on the horizon now, there's quite a lot to see. This is it. Welcome everyone to Mile Castle 42, and you can totally see why this was put here. As we found out earlier on in today's walk, the Holt Whistle Burn brought loads of tracks to the foot of the hill just below this Mile Castle, and the view from here is spectacular. But plans changed pretty quickly, and they built Asaca Fort further down, just a couple of miles to the west of here. But this, though, would still have been a really important part of the wall, because soldiers would have marched from Asaca, they would have been based here, and they would have manned the turrets. But the other thing that they would have done here is they would have actually taken the tax for all the people, all the locals who wanted to come through the wall. This became the crossing point. I mean, how terrible is that of the Romans? Before, the cart's down nice and low next to the river, and then they stick the wall in and they make them pull their carts all the way up to this really quite high point to then come through here, pay the tax, and off they go into the Roman Empire. It's just an amazing place, and you know, a real testament, because I've not seen walls this high in a mile castle anywhere. So thank you, John Clayton. But the era of the Romans was approaching its end, and so is my walk. But what a walk we've had. Ladies and gentlemen, what a hidden gem of a walk this has been. My goodness. Discovering that there was life here before Hadrian's Wall. It's so easy, I know that seems silly, but it's so easy to just be focused on the Roman stuff when you come here, because it's sort of here all around you and you get sort of engrossed with it. But long before the Romans came, the Celts were using this spot to cross, as we found out earlier on in today's walk, and that then led to all the forts that we saw. Great Asaca Fort being, not Great Asaca, it's Great Chester's, it's Asaca Fort being built after the wall had been built. But I think though, the bit that I've enjoyed the most today is uncovering the sort of beginnings of the end of the Roman Empire. It gives a very foreboding feeling as you walk through this landscape, putting yourself in the mindset of those people who, they must have known something was coming. And in our next walk, we're going to find out what that something was. We'll discover how the Roman Empire ended, how Hadrian's Wall was abandoned is not quite the word, because on our next walk, we'll be going from the age of the Romans to the age of castles and the age of knights and chivalry. It's going to be quite the adventure to finish what has been just the most wonderful series to film. So one more walk to go. Don't miss it. I'll see you next time for one last walk in the wall.
That was just epic. My goodness, it was windy, but just...
Your hat kept flipping up, which I thought was hilarious.
At one point, right on the bit on the top, I'm just coming down the other side, and there was a family sat on the wall having lunch, and I'm not joking you, right? It is the windiest I've ever experienced so far in the series. It's sort of similar to the early stages of the wind in a wind tunnel, and this was the spot where they chose to sit to have their lunch.
You've got to admire it, haven't you?
You do have to admire it, but I'm telling you, I could have been sat here with Kay now at that spot and she wouldn't have been able to hear me. It was insanity. I was physically, it was the first time in the series when I had to hold on to my hat.
Couldn't they have sat on the other side of the wall?
No, because they'd have fallen about 300 foot to their deaths.
Right, okay, it was on a ridge.
Yes,
okay, I didn't realise it was on a ridge.
It was right on the top of Cawfield Crags.
Oh, right, okay,
Just
fair enough.
As you say, typical British bulldog spirit.
Yes.
I want my lunch and I'm going to sit here.
I'm hungry now.
I'm going to enjoy the view
Yeah.
and I don't care if I can't hear my family. Just such a tremendous walk. But the big learning point for me from this walk is, my goodness, thank you, John Clayton, for all you did. Because if you had not done what you did, it had never dawned on me that there's not much wall to see until you get to Chester's Fort, which we got to in episode 3. That's the moment. It was sort of episode 3 where or was it episode 2? It was episode 2. That's the moment where things started to appear. And now we've just got to the end of episode 6, and there's been lots of wall to see, and in the next episode there's a lot less wall, and we're outside of John Clayton's land. So I'm starting to think, actually, it's John Clayton that saved it. It wasn't the fact that it was just all up high. Had he not done what he'd done, so thank you so much, John Clayton. He's sort of the Beatrix Potter of Hadrian's Wall.
Yes.
Yeah, just tremendous. So one final show to come, and it's going to be an emotional one because it's from a place which was the first place we ever went to film on Hadrian's Wall.
I love it. It's one of my favourite places on the wall.
And it's going to be quite the walk because, you know, we'll start in Roman times and then we're going to walk slap bang into the age of chivalry and knights and castles and all of that. It's going to be tremendous. Yeah. So Walking the Wall is back later on this year. That came out very strange.
You do. Do it again.
Walking the Wall will be back later on this year. And next time, Kay's back with another My Favourite Colourways. And my goodness, it's a sensational one. So do not miss it. It's going to be amazing. Right now, though, it's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits.
Now then, our next Patron-only show will be on Sunday, the 28th of August.
This Sunday.
Live, yes.
Yay.
It's live at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
So if you are a silver, gold or platinum patron, you can watch it live at 2 p.m. British summertime.
Come and talk to us.
Yes, live. Yep. But if that's too early for you, if it's like the middle of the night, don't panic. Because from 3 you can watch the show whenever you like.
Yeah.
And the same goes for all our patron-only shows. There are tons of them because we do one a month and we've been doing them since about 2015.
Yeah.
So you can go back and watch all of those as well, if you so want to. As we've already mentioned today, the final platinum pattern of 2022 comes out on the 1st of September. But don't miss a very special design diary, which is coming out on the 30th of August, where Kay goes into great detail about the story behind the design. It's a really lovely episode, actually. So don't miss that. That's coming out on the 30th. Cool. The latest issue of our magazine, Knitability, is out now. There's wonderful interviews with Rachel Schaefer, and there's all the usual features, and an article on the history of knitting, which I think you might just enjoy.
I wonder who wrote that.
That was me. That was me, sir. Me. You bought some stuff. Oh,
I have bought a few things. So the first thing is I've got a skein of yarn from Moustache Yarns. I saw this. I signed up to Stacey's newsletter, so I have a little look every time she does an update. And I saw this one. I thought, oh, Bryony would love that.
Tell me the name of it is something to do with sweets.
No, it's that.
Oh, okay. That's still nice. But
yeah, and it's just the colours are just gorgeous. It's this one.
That makes me think of sweet shops from my youth.
Oh, look at that. And it's self-striping, obviously, with Stacey Moustache. And the yarn is called Bee Mermaid. And when I saw it knit up, it's sort of the colours, like the blues fade into the pinks and the pinks fade into the yellows kind of thing. It just reminded me of a beach with water and the sky.
Oh, yeah. I see that now.
And maybe that's where the mermaid thing comes from. But the colours are just beautiful. And I mean, I'll probably save this to maybe spring or summer because it's quite summery colours, but just gorgeous. So lovely skein of self-striping. And then I follow Malabrigo on Instagram. And they put up, I saw a post, I don't see posts very often these days for whatever reasons of Instagrams, I don't know. But I saw this post where they were talking about this new sock yarn from Malabrigo, and my, ears pricked up. I was like, what is this? What is this?
Although, it's just worth saying, you did find, didn't you? That you can filter the posts.
Oh, you can on Instagram. I didn't know. I saw somebody, Tilly, posted and said Tilly Trout posted, and just to remind people that you can actually get the ads off. And what you do is you go up to the top corner where it says Instagram and you click it, and then you get a box. And if you click followers,
that's all you see.
That's all you see.
Fixed.
But you've got to do that every time you go on.
That's fine.
It doesn't stay there all the time.
But
I did that, and I just got all the posts. Stuff. I didn't get all of the horrendous ads. Good tip from Tilly. Thank you, Tilly. But yeah, I saw Malabrigo advertising this yarn, and I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe they've finally done this. And do you know how previously there was Malabrigo sock, and there still is Malabrigo sock, but it's 100% merino. There's no nylon in it. So although it's called Malabrigo sock, it's not really a good idea, I don't think, to knit socks with it. they've come out with a yarn that's called Ultimate Sock, and it's basically like Malabrigo sock, but it's a 75-25. It's merino nylon.
You've got to review this.
Well, I am. So I went looking for it, and actually I found it difficult to find in this country. I think it was launched in June. Maybe it's just not had time to filter through to the bigger sort of yarn online shops. I couldn't see it on Wool Warehouse or like Lovecrafts. But I just searched for it in the UK, and I did find some in a UK shop called Kiddle Stitch Yarns. The website, a little note from Linda, which was very nice. I love it when there's a little note like that. So Kiddle Stitch Yarns, and the service was brilliant, got it really quick. So I ordered a few skeins.
I'm hoping her surname is Kiddle Stitch.
Well, that would be lovely, but
Linda,
it seems unlikely. Linda, is
me.
your name Kiddle Stitch? Or maybe it's Kiddle,
Tell me you married...
which is equally lovely.
Tell me you married Mr. Kiddle Stitch and thought, do you know what, I have to open a yarn shop.
So I ordered a few skeins, and I have actually wound one of them up already. I can grab it in a sec. I was a bit naughty and I bought 4 skeins because I just thought, what if this suddenly disappears? And of course, I don't know how good it's going to be. But I was so excited that I thought, I've just got to have some of this. This is one of the colours that I got. So I got Piedras. The colours are the same, I think, as their previous sort of colours that they've done. This one's lovely purples and sort of a brownish. But it's 75-25, so you get 420 yards to 100 grams, 75% merino, superwash, 25% nylon. And it looks gorgeous. So
Beautiful.
I got that colour, and then I've got Indicita, which I think is quite a famous Malabrigo colour, isn't it? Indicita. It might have been Indicita that I used for...
Looks familiar.
The cardigan that I knit for your mum, the old man, Man in the Sea, it might have been. And then this crazy one called Sir, with all these bonkers speckles.
Beautiful.
It feels lovely and plump. It feels very much like Malabrigo sock. It smells really bad of vinegar. It's like...
They always do that.
Well, Madeleine Tosh always used to. It doesn't smell as bad as it first did, actually. But the one that I've wound up, I'll show you next time, actually. But I had an awful time winding it on the ball winder in the Swift. It kept slipping. It does feel quite silky. But when I was winding it, it just kept slipping, on the actual bit of the winder here. So like half of the skein would slip down as I was winding it, and it just ended a mess. I tried 3 times, took it all off, tried 3 times, it just kept slipping. So in the end, I just had to wind it into a ball by hand, which I found really irritating. So I'll try again the next time I wind one and just see how that goes. But I think it's just because it feels like quite a soft... It does feel quite silky. And if you don't like the vinegar smell, I would probably recommend that you just give it a wash before you use it, if you want to get rid of that vinegar smell. I'm excited to try it.
Cool, folks, that's it. Don't miss Kay's review coming out. I think it's next week on the Knit Pro Nova needle. She's just actually put out another review recently, which people have been really loving, on the Likey, Mr. Likey Bikey, whatever it's called, Leica.
Yeah, what's that that you just said?
That's for Grandpa in my pocket.
Oh, yes. I like a biker.
So,
that was it, wasn't it?
Yeah, these are the copper needles. She just put a review out for
copper
that,
ones.
which has been quite controversial, which is fun. So, lots going on at the moment. But for now, folks, thank you so much for watching.
Thanks, everyone.
Hopefully we'll see you on Sunday for our Patron-only show. It's going to be a cracker. We're going to be rounding off the Summer of Stitching and the Stitchy U and getting excited about Sockaween. All sorts of wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in 2 weeks with more.
See you soon.
Bye.
Sitting and knitting, extending K the bakery bears. Enthusiasm's not quitting, pretending K the bakery bears. They'll take you to fabulous places of which they're favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern, get yourself a bakery bear. You'll find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what's in